The reason that I chose the concept of worship for our discussion tonight was because recently the Baha'is around the world received a message from the Universal House of Justice, which is the governing body of the Baha'i faith around the world, elected body. And in it, they said that a number of new national and regional houses of worship will be built around the world. As you know, all religions have houses of worship, and they are called different names, cathedrals, churches, mosques, temples, synagogues. They have different names, but they are all places of worship. And they have certain functions. In the Baha'i community, in the Baha'i faith, however, the concept of house of worship is somewhat different and has dimensions and aspects that are rather complex and very interesting. And when I read that message, I asked myself how much I knew about the Baha'i concept of worship and realized that I knew very, very little. Hence, you are going to get very, very little tonight. So, but that's the way life is. We will add to our knowledge together about that. First of all, let's see how usually the word worship is defined. And they define it the following. I give you a few definitions. For example, in the context of general definition of worship, it is said that it is reverence offered a divine being or a supernatural power. Also, many times worship is defined as a form of religious practice with its creed and its rituals. And in the scientific literature, when they, academic literature, when they talk about worship, they identify at least 5 issues that have to be present in order to call something worship. One is that the object of worship must be other than the person himself, although many people worship themselves. But in reality, the worship has to be for others, for an other. The second, that the worshipper must experience superiority of that which is worshipped. Another word, what we worship has to be superior to ourselves. That's the second component. And the third one, according to this academic definition, worship must involve ritual. And the fourth one, that which is worshipped must be experienced as numinous. Numinous meaning mysteriously associated with the holy, with deity. Numinous. And finally, the worshipped must be a transcendent concept. Transcendent means that it must be beyond limits of experience. That's the word transcendent means. So as you see, they have tried very hard to bring different elements that usually people consider as worship in this definition. Okay. And let's continue a little bit more about what generally people think about worship before we focus on Baha'i concept of worship. For example, in Christianity, the concept of worship is somewhat related also to the way that people live. Here is one individual who has given a definition of biblical worship. He says, so next time you go to church, raise your hands and shout out to the Lord in worship. Keep in mind that He also expects you to live that worship out in life. So here comes a notion of bringing the idea of communion with God, with deity, with superior reality, with a way of life and a way of action and so forth. Or for example, in Islam, the whole idea of worship and action and the way we live is quite connected to each other. There are many comments in Islam that expand the concept of worship. For example, whoever finds himself at the night tired of his work, God will forgive his sins, because the work here is seen as an act of worship. Or, for example, Prophet Muhammad said seeking knowledge is a religious duty on every Muslim, which is very, very, very significant. Or, for example, he said that seeking knowledge for 1 hour is better than praying for 70 years. Hence, people pray and not to think, because obviously thinking is very difficult. 70 years of prayer, 1 hour of thinking. So these are very interesting statements. When you reflect on it, when you think of it, you will see that Islam expanded the concept of worship considerably when you compare it with previous dispensations. For example, in Hinduism, the concept of worship involves invoking higher forces to assist you in spiritual and material progress. Okay. So these are just very brief summary review of the concepts of worship. There are many more. I just wanted to give you a taste of what has been the thinking about worship. The other thing that you notice about worship in the general community, the societies that are religiously oriented, you will see that worship is very public. For example, if you are in a Christian community, especially in Europe, but not so much in North America, because North America has become very much taking the worship out of the domain of social life to the degree possible. But in European countries, for example, you will hear the churches, the bells going on constantly and announcing different events and different occasions and different times for prayers and so forth. In Islam, the situation is much more common. For in the middle of the night, you wake up, Muazzin is calling the faithful go for worship. Those of us who have lived in Islamic countries, you know, the rituals of people going to the mosque for worship is so public. You get up early in the morning, you go to the public bath, you go through special rituals. Those special rituals would indicate what kind of activities the night before you have been involved in. Everybody knows what you have been doing, and then you purify yourself, and then you go to the mosque, and then you say prayers. So everything is in the public. Everybody knows what you are doing, what's happening. The same thing is about, you know, Christian modes of worship, in which people go every Sunday and they're there, and also some go Wednesdays and Sundays, and others go more often. So these are all very, very public aspects, and they are filled with rituals and specific actions and processes and so forth. Okay, so this is the way that the worship has been conducted around the world. And also, you know, I recently was in Bangkok and went to some of the temples there, and it was amazing the fervor with which people come for worship. Or you hear on television and radio people in India going, masses of people going for worship to different places, and they get killed in the process because of large number of people and disorderly processes that are there and so forth. So, keeping this in mind, let's go back and reflect a little bit about worship, the concept of worship, and to see what in the Baha'i faith we think about worship. Among the main elements of worship, we can identify at least three things. One is prayer. The other one is meditation. And the third one is service. These are the things that usually we can identify. Now, prayer has many dimensions and many natures. There is a continuum in a prayer. Most of the time, people pray because they are in condition of need, because they are frightened, they are needy, they are in danger, they are in situations of desperation, they are in pain, and they pray and ask for relief from the condition that they are in. Sometimes people pray, or many times people pray for what they want to have. The first group is people pray for what they need, and the second category is what they want. Oh God, give me $5 million, or nowadays it's $50 million. Yes, all kind of things like that. We pray for what we need, and we pray for what we want. However, in the Baha'i concept, when we study the teachings of the Baha'i faith, and when we read, for example, the obligatory prayers of the Baha'i faith that every Baha'i has to say it every day, is the food of the soul. Prayer is the food of the soul, so you need it every day. The same way that the body needs food, the soul needs food, and the prayer is the soul of prayer is the food of the soul. And because of that, they are obligatory. They have to make sure that they have it every day. And if we miss it, we have to then do something to replace that missed feeding of the soul. When we study carefully the essence and contents of the Baha'i prayers, we see that they are basically love songs. They are expression of love of the lover to the beloved. It is the Baha'i prayer is a process in which we connect, we express our love with the source of our love, all love, which is the beloved, which is God, which is the expression of Godhood on this planet. So prayer becomes the connection of the heart with the divine. There's more to be said about it, and one of my talks earlier, we talked about that. Now, the other dimension of the worship is the whole issue of meditation. Meditation is a process of reflection, of thinking, of searching. What is it that we are searching? We are searching to find and understand the spiritual ways of living. The fundamental process of search is search for truth. We always have to search for truth, for righteousness, for what is right. So because of that, meditation becomes thinking about how to live one's life in the path of the spirituality. How one, therefore, in the Baha'i concept, therefore, the process of this meditation would focus on some fundamental virtues. For example, the whole capacity to become a unifier. Because unity is the fundamental law of existence and of the teachings of the Baha'i faith, the central teaching of the Baha'i faith. Therefore, when we meditate, we have to think, how can we create unity? How we can be a unifier? And unity and love are interconnected. That's the reason that prayer and meditation are totally interconnected. They cannot be separated from each other. Because love is the force of unity. It is impossible to create unity without love. You have to first love in order to be able to create unity and bring people and whatever together. Okay. So then love and unity becomes totally interconnected with each other. And then no thought, meditation, or sentiment, love, in the context of prayer, or any value of any value, unless they are expressed in action. There has to be a fruit emerging from our thoughts and from our feelings, from our love, and from our meditation. If our meditation and prayer and pursuit of love and pursuit of truth and justice and unity are not expressed in life, then they are of no value. They have to be totally integrated and put together. So these processes of searching for truth and ways and spiritual truth, meditation, and process of constantly expanding the horizon and the depth of our love through prayer, and then putting them into action are the three functions of the three powers of human soul: to know, to love, and to will. So they're all connected with each other. It is the process of making life in its totality and wholeness, expression of these spiritual realities. Now, this therefore becomes the act of worship. Now, any act of worship has two dimensions. One is the private, personal dimension, and the other has the public, social dimension. The private dimension of prayer is, of worship is prayer and meditation. You pray and meditate individually. Now, as I mentioned, the way that prayer and meditation and worship is now practiced generally is all public. People go publicly to the church or to mosque or to temple to pray. In the Baha'i faith, Baha'u'llah said, all prayers, obligatory prayers, your obligatory meditation has to take place privately. You don't go out there to pray. You stay, you do your prayers and your meditation privately. Nobody calls you to do it. Nobody forces you to do it. There is no social pressure. In Islam, if you don't go on Friday prayer, everybody knows that you haven't been there. If you don't go to the church, all your friends and neighbors know that you haven't been in the church. Okay? But in the Baha'i faith, Baha'u'llah completely took away that power on the part of the religious organizations and said, prayer and meditation and communion with God has to be private. In privacy of your chamber, you pray and communicate however you feel the most comfortable in that sense. And therefore, the only public prayer that collectively is said in the Baha'i faith is the prayer for the dead. When somebody dies and we all go to the cemetery, we say a prayer collectively. But otherwise, the essential prayers that are said in the Baha'i faith are personal things. It is true that Baha'i events are opened with a general, somebody saying a prayer. But that's for a general kind of helping everybody to get focused. It's not the act of prayer that you have to do at home. And that's the reason that you don't have in every city and every neighborhood and every block a church or a mosque or a temple or something like that. This never is going to be the structure of praying in the Baha'i community. And so that's one dimension. Now, the public dimension of prayer also has been taken, has been given a very different context in the Baha'i faith. Because in the Baha'i faith, a number of things have been identified as prayer. Some of them had been identified in previous religions, and some of them are now totally new, that are very interesting. First of all, Baha'u'llah says that everybody should work. Everybody should work. And anybody who works in a spirit of service and helping other people is engaged in worship. As a matter of fact, the guardian of the Baha'i faith, Shoghi Effendi, says that everybody, even the handicapped individuals, have to work. And the purpose of work is not only to have some material condition, that work by itself is an act of worship because it's a process of a human individual accessing his or her capacities and get engaged in a creative process. When we are working, we forget ourselves and we are focused on act of relationship or creativity, which is also both of them are interrelated. We are totally engaged in a different process of discovering talents and capacities that God has given us, a gift within us, that we constantly discover them. And also we constantly discover new ways of communicating with others. So if you're a nurse, or if you're a lawyer, or if you're a teacher, or if you're a artist, or whatever, you are engaged in active process of greater level of self-knowledge in the context of relationship with other people, in context of creativity, in the context of making things. And these are all of extreme value in the spiritual development of the individual and the society. And because of that, one of the teachings of the Baha'i faith is that the leaders of the society have the responsibility to create economic conditions in such a way that everybody would have a job. Everybody would work. There is one of the things that there is a statement that is very interesting, because and he said that among the unique aspects of the Baha'i concept of worship is that idle people who lack the desire to work can have no place in the new world order, the world order of Baha'u'llah. We cannot just be idle people not doing anything. Another thing is that Baha'u'llah has stated that mendicity means begging. Begging should not only be discouraged, but entirely wiped out from the face of society. Okay? And it goes on in a large number of issues related to the Baha'i concept of worship, a concept of worship and service that are given to create a new kind of a society. Now, central, and let's continue to these issues. Another area that is considered as worship is art. In the Baha'i writings, clearly has been stated that people who are engaged in artistic endeavors are engaged in acts of service. Another, science. People who are engaged in scientific pursuits are engaged in act of worship. Another area is that people who work, whatever work they do, as long as they do it in a spirit of serving other people, is act of worship. Every area of life that people are engaged, when it is done within the framework of serving others, of being of service, is an act of worship. You see, And for example, a painter, when Abdul Baha was in London, a painter asked, "Is art a worthy vocation?" Abdul Baha, turning to her impressively and said, "Art is worship." It's very simple, very much to the point. It is art is worship. Science is worship, he said. So this broadening of the concept of worship, applying it to all areas of human life, as long as they are done in a spirit of serving other people, is a unique aspect of the concept of worship in the Baha'i faith. Okay? Another thing that here is very interesting is a statement Abdul Baha wrote to a mother, said, O ye loving mother, know ye that in God's sight the best of all ways to worship, the best of all ways to worship Him is to educate the children and train them in all the perfections of humankind. And no nobler deed than this can be imagined. Isn't that interesting? In our society, we think raising children is secondary to, for example, being the head of a company, okay, or professor of university, or whatever you do. And here, in the Baha'i faith, no nobler act can be imagined than training and raising children, which also, of course, applies to teachers and the profession of teaching. Okay, so you will see that how the process, the idea of worship has been expanded in the Baha'i faith. Now, in order, therefore, to bring certain degree of harmony and integration to the process of worship in the Baha'i community, future Baha'i communities, we have a concept in the Baha'i faith which is very unique. And that is the concept of Mashriqu'l-Adhkár. Mashriqu'l-Adhkár is an Arabic word, and it means the dawning place of remembrance of God, the dawning place of the praise of God. Mashriqu'l-Adhkár. And Abdul Baha said that one of the most vital institutions in the world is Mashriqu'l-Adhkár. Okay? So it's a good idea to reflect a little bit about this concept of Mashriqu'l-Adhkár, the dawning place of the praise of God, and to see what it means. It is an institution. Okay? An institution meaning it is a reality, a social reality that has many dimensions and many functions. Okay? So, Shoghi Effendi says, Shoghi Effendi again, the guardian of the Baha'i faith, says that the concept of Mashriqu'l-Adhkár exemplifies in tangible form the integration of Baha'i worship and service. is the integration of worship and service. So the components of Mashriqu'l-Adhkár are, first, a house of worship. You build a house of worship. Ultimately, eventually, in the Baha'i civilization, one house of worship will be built in every city. Not many houses of worship and so forth, one house of worship in every city. Okay. Then, adjacent to the house of worship will be universities, schools, hospitals, place for the elders, place for the orphans, place for people who are in need of care of different types. So various institutions of the society, educational institutions, service institutions, artistic institutions, they all will be connected with each other. And the place of prayer, house of worship, the place that you go for praying, just as symbolic, because the praying, as I said, would take place in a privacy of your own, but the house of worship would be a place of unification of all religions. Anybody and everybody can come. And all of these together would be components of the Mashriqu'l-Adhkár. So Mashriqu'l-Adhkár becomes a place, an institution which unites the intellectual endeavors of humanity, artistic endeavors of humanity, the social activities of people, the service dimension of people, everything that we do, the way that we relate to each other, the way we take care of each other, the way that we are concerned about the poor, about the oppressed, about all of these things become connected with each other. In other words, it is impossible to separate different aspects of human work from each other. So right now, many people live schizophrenic, divided lives, meaning their professional life is one way, and their personal and life another way, and their religious life another way. Okay? So people go, for example, make money in many ways that are not all that noble, and then on the weekends they go to church or mosque or wherever it is, and they pray for forgiveness and give a little bit of money for charity, hoping that now their money would be purified. And therefore there is no integration of what people do, how people relate, and what intentions of people are, and the way they express love. They are not integrated. In the Baha'i concept of worship, all of these issues have to become integrated with each other, so that we begin to create a society that would be spiritually focused rather than materially focused. Right now, our societies is materialistically focused. We have a material civilization. And in material civilization, the focus is on having things, on having more and more and more, accumulating more, having more money, having more power, having more fame, having things. In a spiritual civilization, the focus is on being. being a loving person, a harmonious person, a unifier, a truthful person, a creative person, a person that is the center of good rather than the opposite. So the whole idea of creating a spiritual civilization rather than a material civilization is not that you don't have material progress. Of course you would have material progress. It's not that you will be poor. No, you will be rich. It's not that you put difficult clothes on and suffer. No, you put beautiful clothes and so, all of those are perfectly fine. And it doesn't mean, spirituality doesn't mean that you isolate yourself from the society, that you go to the caves and go to the different places away from everybody and civilization and everything in order to be spiritual. Spirituality takes place in the context of social life and relationships and interactions, and in everything that we do is not separated from the realities of life and mundane facts of life. In other words, the ordinary acts of life become spiritualized in the process of this type of worship. So the concept of a world order of Baha'u'llah, a new civilization, is the whole idea of creating a civilization which revolves around the principles of worship and service put together. And the institution that signifies that unification is the institution of Mashri'l-Adhkár, the dawning place of praise, of the praise of God. So that is here is some thoughts about the concept of worship. There are much more to be taught, but I think we can now open it for discussion and add to different dimensions of this issue. Please, anybody? Yes.
I was just thinking about the different kinds of work you mentioned, like raising your children is a type of work, painting, being an artist is a type of work, and it translates to worship when you do it willingly, trying to make the product of what you're doing be of benefit.
That's right.
And I was just thinking that based on that bigger understanding of work, is almost like not only seen from different, not seen as different types of activities, but it's also redefining work, because usually we look at work as a way you do it in order to produce something, yes. But it's also to gain. So
That's
you
right.
are trying to get money and all of that. So when you first say, so work becomes worship, work is an act of worship, and then after you mention about a mother raising his child, it's a worship too,
That's
and
right.
it's work too. So it really brings work as this very much deeper, releasing human potential, and that potential being put out there for others to benefit from it. Not only receiving, but it's really, you are receiving because you are developing your potential, but you do it in such a way that is for service to the rest of humanity. So it really changes the nature of work itself, the way we see work.
Absolutely.
We understand work.
Absolutely. The Baha'i concept of worship and Baha'i concept of work is totally unique because it places the work at different level and it gives a different meaning. You see, historically, work has been connected to the issue of survival. The issue of people finding enough food and shelter and health, and this and that. This has been the whole notion of work historically. And then when human societies became a little bit richer and people some people at least became more prosperous, added to issue of survival was the issue of pleasure, to have good time and good clothes and good cars and good everything, okay? And in the world that we live today, these are fundamentally the two things that are related to work. One is enough to secure your safety and your being alive, and the other one is to have relatively good life, okay? Now, Baha'u'llah says that human societies have reached to the point now that actually there is enough wealth in this world, that if that wealth was equitably and fairly distributed throughout the globe, everybody would have been secure as far as their survival is concerned, and to have reasonable life. And then once these are done, that is when the true potential of humanity can come to the forefront and we can blossom, okay? Humanity hasn't blossomed yet, okay? Because we have been so preoccupied with these two basic aspects of economy and organization of human society. So the whole idea of creating a new civilization, universal civilization, a spiritual civilization, is exactly based on the type of redefinition of work that you mentioned, okay? So that all activities are given value in this context, and the value is not only monetary value, is much greater and broader value. And that means that we have to rethink many aspects of our society and way that we live and the way we organize our society.
One thing that I think connects to what you were saying, to me, when you put work as worship, it's also a way of being thankful. And the analogy I give is, let's say I'm a parent and I'm paying for my kids' education. My sacrifice, my gift to my children is their tuition, my work, and their worship is to study and to work at it.
Absolutely, yes.
So we have a lot of bounty from the Creator, and so by not mindfully and fully working at what we have been given in life, that's we're not worshiping. We're taking trivially.
We are not grateful.
We're not grateful.
Yes.
So worship is an acknowledgement that what we got in life, whatever it is, our children, our problems, whatever it is, we have to work at everything we have.
That's
in fact,
right.
life is work.
That's
There's
right.
nothing in life but work. I mean, you think of relationships, whatever you have is work. So everything that we have has been given to us to work at it. So work is basically our opportunity to be thankful and to worship. And so I think that's
another dimension of the same phenomena.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, I just wondered if in Islam
the concept of work as worship is not there. Because I was talking to a Muslim some time back, and I was trying to express the uniqueness of this work is worship in the Baha'i faith. And I think he mentioned to me that it's also there in Islam. I'm not too sure if the Quran or Hadith.
Yes.
I just,
No, as I mentioned in my beginning of my talk, in Islam, the concept of work as worship is there. Yes. The manner in which it has been understood and practiced is different, because it has become connected with the whole issue of worship has been separated from issue of service in many different ways, because of the whole idea of public nature of the worship, coming out and being pious and so forth, and dichotomy of that, and also the way that Islamic societies are structured. People give zakat and give certain contributions and so forth. These contributions go through the institution of the mosque and through the institution of religious authorities and religious groups. So they have the potential of being misused or abused, and historically have been misused and abused and are being misused and abused. So you see the whole concept of progressive revelation that exists in the Baha'i faith. It means that when you look at any religion, you will see elements of the teachings of that religion in the previous religion and in the religions that come after. So yes, Baha'i faith encompasses all the concepts of worship that exist in Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, and so forth, and verifies the reality of all of them. And sure, you will find many similarities in Christianity, in Islam, in Buddhism, and so forth, with the Baha'i teachings. It's only a matter of further expansion of them, a further universalization of them, making it more now applicable on a universal level, on an all-encompassing level, within the framework of unity and the consciousness of oneness of humanity. So separations don't take place and so forth. That's the reason that, for example, the house of worship doesn't become only for Baha'is. It's open to everybody to come and worship, because you see what has happened right now is that humanity is divided along different ideological and religious lines, Muslims, Jews, Christians, and so forth. And in the Baha'i civilization, everything has to come together. You have to be united. But sure, it doesn't negate any of the concepts that exist in other religions. Yes. Yes, please.
So I'm curious about any thoughts you have about devotional gatherings and how that relates to worship, if there's a connection. And also Abdul Baha's statement about if they chant supplications together.
That's right.
In a good and effective voice, that is very good. So
I think devotional gatherings and chanting and so forth are occasions of inspiration, of unity building, of community building, of encouragement of each other, of getting together further. They are all essential elements of that nurture individual creativity as well as social creativity and cohesion. So they're essential, and they become the source. We learn from each other, and we are inspired by each other, and are touched. Our hearts are touched when we are together in those kind of occasions. All of those That's the reason that we find those things encouraged in the Baha'i faith, you see. The whole idea of groups coming together, chanting together, saying prayers together, having arts and sciences and whatever expressed together. Yes, all of those are elements of social life, but they don't take place of the individual process of a spiritual relationship that we have to do. There are obligatory prayers or communion with God in privacy of our own chamber. You see, ultimately we human beings are, while we are social beings, we are also alone. There are certain things that we can share, but there are many things that we can share only with God and nobody else. Okay, because this is the nature of human life, you see. So both of them are necessary in order to create a truly thriving, marvelous civilization. Yes.
And I think the word, to me, devotional means worship, or in the same...
Is a component of it, yes.
It can be, yeah, collective worship.
That's right. It's a
there
component.
There are statements where Abdul-Baha talks about the Mashriqu'l-Adhkár as being the individual heart's connection.
That's right.
And other places where he talks about these gatherings, whether it be in a home or a basement or wherever. And thirdly, he talks about it as the building and the institution, right? So
that's right. It has different dimensions, yes.
Yeah, so I think that the collective
that's right.
dimension of worship is also an important component in Baha'i worship.
That's right. As long as it doesn't become ritualized.
Yeah.
You see, what has happened in other religions is that rituals have replaced the actual purpose and objective of communion of the individual with the divine. And the whole notion in the Baha'i faith is to make sure that these things are not ritualized. Okay, and you know, we do social activities and this and that and bring diversity to the process in the context of unity, but ritualization doesn't take place. That this is the only right way of worship, you know, kind of thing.
I'd like to go back to what you were saying earlier about how in the Baha'i